When you are reaching out to get someone to come back to your practice, then it's very baseline. Healthcare doesn't have to be boring, it can be fun. So, when we think about community, what is a common core for how you can bring people together so that way you can remain top of mind?
Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. This is your one-stop shop to learn the business side of your practice on a deeper level. On this show, we empower you to own your CEO status to scale your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit. Listen in as we talk about how to market your practice to gain more visibility, hire, build, and engage your ride or die dream team, create streamlined operations, and make financial decisions as a CEO. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love. Let's get started.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. It is Brandy, and we are here together for another week. I'm so excited. So today we are talking about how to increase the lifetime value of a patient. So each patient or client that comes into your door has a lifetime value or an LTV to them, whether it's the one time that you see them or the multiple times that you see them. There is a certain level of relationship building that goes into this. And so when we think about the first initial appointment, people often think like, oh, that's it, one and done. No, you're not. No, you're not. No, you're not. And so when we think about the lifetime value of a patient, whether you have 5 providers, 30 providers, 55 providers, this is where the revenue generation becomes easier. This is where trying to get more patients in the door becomes easier. This is where if you're bringing on an additional service line, especially in today's landscape, then multidisciplinary is really powerful. But you have to have the providers to do that, and you have to be able to fill schedules. So the lifetime value of a patient is really, really, really impactful. So let's talk about it when a person first schedules. When we're thinking about a person when they first schedule their appointment, a new patient who has never heard of you before, then there is the one time that they come in, whether if it's their new patient visit or their consultation, then that is one, right? And so each specialty has the way that they continue to work with patients, whether if it's the mental health field where it's multiple sessions, whether if it's dietary, registered dietitians where maybe you're bringing folks back for, as they're trying to hit their nutrition goals, or if they're diabetic and they need help and support with that, from the medical practices that have patients that come back maybe every 3 months, once a year, every 6 months. There is still the lifetime value of patients coming back. From an operation standpoint, where I see people drop the ball, is they always look at patients as one and done. They never think about, oh, well, did that person come back? Did they schedule their follow-up appointment? I wanted them to come back in 6 months. Did they come back in 6 months? No. Or we forgot to call them, or we didn't call them, or we sent an email and nothing ever happened with it, so we never reached back out again, right? This is where the lifetime value gets missed, because there's a certain dollar amount that can come with each and every patient. I think about from mental health sometimes, and HIPAA. Sometimes HIPAA, I think, pushes people not to reach out. But as long as you were not saying, hey, Susie Smith, date of birth of February 9th, 1922, and you are 80 years old and you have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Alabama and your group ID number is blah, 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 and you're coming in for a diagnosis of X, Y, and Z, and you saw us last time and your lab appointments are showing all the stuff and you have this disease and this disease and this disease and this disease. That's not what happens. That's not what happens when you are reaching out to get someone to come back to your practice. Then it's very baseline. Hi, this is so-and-so from so-and-so's practice, give us a call back whenever you get a chance. You can call us back at blah, 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 hang up the phone. It's very, very basic. You don't say their first name, don't say their last name. It looks like it could even be the wrong number, but the person who actually knows, who is affiliate with the practice, they know. But if the person who is like their spouse or something, they don't know. And even that person, you're giving them an out, oh, they must have a wrong number. So at the end of the day, when we're thinking about the lifetime value of the practice, you have to be an active participant of gaining the lifetime value of a patient. I said practice, but of a patient. And when you do that, then the amount of revenue that can come in the door is really powerful. So when you first have someone come in again for their first visit, what is the follow up, right? So, is there a certain amount of visits that's supposed to be connected to their diagnosis? Is there, the operations, are they supporting you when it comes to making sure that they're getting back on the schedule? Is there a follow up process if they don't schedule or if they skip their appointment? I had a doctor's appointment that I canceled because I no longer need it. Like straight up for real, I no longer need it. Do you know that receptionist called me back within 15 minutes of me canceling my appointment, talking about we need to get you back on the appointment or get you back on the schedule? That's them exercising the lifetime value of a patient, right? Because they know, like, first of all, we're going to lose out on this first visit, and then you're not going to be able to come back. So it's a specialty office. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I was so impressed. I called back the practice and let them know, like, yeah, I no longer need the appointment, but I gave them kudos because 15 minutes, like 15 minutes, like that means that that person's on it. And that is so good. And I'm sure their revenue and their P&L is probably very strong because of that. So at the end of the day, like your operational processes and systems have to support for you to get the lifetime value of a patient. I cannot say that enough. The other thing is recognizing, is there a different way for you to engage your patient, right? So healthcare doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun. And a lot of times people are in spaces where they're struggling or they feel alone or they feel like no one understands and they don't necessarily have the support that they need with some of the stuff that's happening in their life. So one of the things too that you can do to engage and really to get the lifetime value out of a patient is build community. Like community is so powerful when we think about healthcare, when we think about people's mindset. Sometimes they have crazy things that are happening, or even just simple diagnoses, and they feel alone or nobody understands. And, so if you have a certain population that you serve, or if there's a certain specialty, then having a community that comes part of it is very powerful. The other thing is it always allows for that person who needs to schedule an appointment. You're always top of mind because they're in the community. So if they have a problem, well, let me call the doctor, or let me call my therapist office, or let me call the practice. But you want to make sure that you're thinking about the true needs of your patient. I work with a client who's a physician, and with her practice specifically, then she has a community that she has built in from the women who are pregnant. And so for each stage of pregnancy that they're in, there's a community aspect to that. So they get to bond, they get to, talk about their experiences. They have certain topics that they get to talk about. And so it's a really nice way. And then even post, then they still have bonds and friendships that have formed. And so it allows for people to be attached to the practice from a different perspective. I just compared to just going to the doctor and getting my blood pressure checked or something. Like, so when we think about community, what is a common core for how you can bring people together so that way you can remain top of mind? The nice thing, especially with people who might have like in-person experiences, you can have events, people can come to the practice, or even if you have a virtual setup, can you bring people together as just like a virtual event? Once you start to engage people and help people in a deeper way, then they naturally want to continue to do business with you, and they naturally want to continue to schedule with you, and they naturally want to tell other their family, friends, and all the people, about your practice. So you want to make sure that you're just thinking deeper outside of just the one visit, but how can you turn the one visit into the 20 visits? And how can you turn the 20 visits into the years of, I've been going to this practice for years? And even as the owner, you can still do this with your current providers, right? So even as maybe you transition out of the day-to-day of seeing patients, you can still have community around your practice. And the nice thing too, if we're talking about leveraging your time, then from group visits, that is a thing. You can start to find ways to insert yourself where it's a one-to-many model, where you're still building community and you're still inserting yourself, but you're not having to see all the patients every single day and do all the stuff. You can insert yourself as part of the community. You can maybe teach on something and you're still able to put your essence into the practice too. So it's really nice when you start to really step outside the box of just what the typical healthcare model looks like, and what it looks like for you to truly engage your people on a deeper level.
Hey, private practice owner, I have great news. Private Practice CEO is officially open for enrollment. So if you've been sitting at your desk frustrated with the business side of your practice, not too sure what to do about your team dynamic, haven't looked at your numbers in a while, then this program is for you. Inside of Private Practice CEO, we're all about you scaling your practice for growth, sustainability, and profit, making sure that we are setting you up for success. So that way you can leverage your practice. You can have freedom of time in your practice, and you don't have to sit there burned out, frustrated, and overwhelmed because you're not sure what to do next. If any of this sounds great to you, then I want to make sure that you apply today because the program is phenomenal. We have amazing testimonials for practice owners who have been able to have more structure, able to make more money, being able to lead from a place of empowerment, and definitely been able to leverage their practice to go after more. So click the link today.
The other thing is you might be wondering, how do you maintain people? Because when we're thinking about recurring revenue, it's always easier if you know that, okay, this person's going to come back next year. Those schedules are scheduled. So one of the things I always say, if you go into your practice management system, your appointment scheduler, you can see how much money you're going to make this time next year. Literally. Because if your follow-up is strong, or if your, planning out is strong, or let me go ahead and schedule you for 6 months from now, or let's go ahead and get you scheduled from a year from now, you should have patients who are already there if you're doing it right. And if it's in a place where your schedules are empty, then you might want to look at how's your experience. So if you're getting a lot of complaints, or if your wait times are off, or if you are not able to follow up accordingly, or maybe it's a busy season, Google reviews might be a little bit off, then having surveys that you do or asking for feedback. I know that there is the thing of, well, I don't want to intimidate the patient, or I don't want to interfere with that provider-patient relationship. And I'm not saying that, but as a practice, remember the practice is its own entity. It's a separate living, breathing thing. The practice, you need to know how is the practice doing, not how much. And then part of those questions could be about the care that the person's receiving. But the provider should not be having those conversations. Those conversations would come from either your manager or from your admin team, or, those emails. They can fill out anonymous surveys, like all of that. So that way that person isn't sitting in the room talking about, I feel intimidated, 5 stars, like, so that way you're getting honest feedback from how is the practice doing? Because you need to know, like, there's a really great book called The Ultimate Question, so 2.0, and it talks about the Net Promoter Score and just the golden rule, which is truly you want to treat people the way that you want to be treated. And the best way that you can do that is through knowing feedback. Like, you need feedback. So that way you can, oh, we're doing well, or no, we're not. There's some things that we need to improve on. So it's just all, any kind of feedback is gold. So a really good thing is when you are in a place of having to re-engage your patient. So let's say we have not done a really great job of recalling back anybody, and there is like a whole gang of people who have not been in the practice for the past like 3 years. What do? Well, you go to your EMR system and you pull a list. And so you should be able to pull reporting that would tell you who's been seen recently, and maybe some folks who have fallen through the cracks if they haven't been seen recently. And the best thing that you can do is honestly just reach out. Like the recall part of it can be done through phone call. It can be done through email, especially if they're an existing patient. You can go ahead and recall them back through your patient portal. So if you wanted to do a campaign, like a recall campaign, or if you wanted to send out an email newsletter through your portal, you can actually do those things. A lot of people don't talk about that, but you can, especially when we're trying to make sure that things are HIPAA compliant. If you are in a place of just, good old fashioned phone call, text message, anything that's going to get them to remember that, like, oh, I need help. And people do make money from that. So it's called, I think in the accounting world, it's called old business. I call it, new blood versus old blood. And so like your new blood, it would be all your new patients, but like the old patients, the people who have been around and who have been in the practice, it's actually easier to engage them. And a lot of times people go out and find new patients before they will even engage old patients. But it's easier to engage an old person, well, not an old person, but it's easier to engage like an older patient, a patient who's been part of the practice for a while compared to going out and getting all these new patients. So, and if we're talking about really savviness, then you could have natural, re-engaging policies and processes and systems and policy and procedures in order to make sure that that is consistently happening. So for the practices that I have been part of and I have ran, we always had a solid recall strategy. If I knew like my budget numbers were going to be off, then I was recalling people who were supposed to be coming in the first couple of weeks of the next month. Like, let's get them in now because I need to make sure I hit budget. So you can go ahead and definitely utilize that. And like I said, it's always easier to re-engage people compared to going out and getting new people who know nothing about your practice. So the process has to be there. So if you are in a place of, man, there is some money on the table that I've been leaving on the table, and we can definitely do a better job operationally with making sure that we're leveraging the lifetime value of our patients, then more money always equals freedom. When you have a team who can make sure that your practice is running without you, there's freedom that's part of that. Yeah, so if I definitely want you to go ahead and join me for the Freedom Formula workshop that I'm hosting. All the information is in the show notes. So it is a free 90-minute training where I work with you on the leadership part of your team, operations. We talk about financials. We talk about what inside of your practice is actually going to give you really great freedom. And I do all the things that you're not supposed to do on those calls. So I answer questions, I'll consult, I'll coach you up, I'll give you mindset shifts and all the things. So at this point in time, we keep the workshop really intimate. So if you are in a place of needing support, if you are a practice owner with a team, then I definitely would love to see you on that. So you can see the show notes to go ahead and register for our next workshop today. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.